Hi there. Welcome to Public Administration 3305, where American public policy comes alive. We are starting into week 6 this week, lesson 6, and we're almost halfway through the semester. Off to a really great start. I'm really impressed with you guys so far. We have a lot of good things coming on, a lot of good paper topics submitted, some really good writing been done so far. Really good, thorough evaluations of policies and questions, and a good collaborative effort on discussions, and good performance on quizzes. We're not out of the woods yet. We still have a little over half the semester to go. We have an exam in a couple weeks, so just a good start though. But let's keep up the good work. Let's make this next one the best week yet. How's that sound? Okay, so this week we're looking at fiscal policies, economic policy. This is going to be our first launch into an exploration of actually a specific policy area. So we're getting into economic policy. I'm going to give you one interesting example about economic policy that I think is going to help tie a lot of this together. So we're going to talk about interest rates. Okay, so the federal government has a tool in their economic policy tool belt, and it's called fiscal policy setting. And one thing they can do is set the interest rate for the federal funds to be borrowed. So there's a big pot of federal money. Banks can borrow money out of the federal pool of cash. Okay, so the Fed can set a rate at which it allows banks to borrow money from it, and so the amount of money that the rate that it charges is usually correlated with how high and how well the economy is doing, and it's actually inversely correlated. So if the economy is doing just really well, then the federal funds rate will generally be it's positive correlated, will actually be higher because the Fed doesn't want the economy to get so hot and burn so hot and so well that it spins out of control. And so it's almost like if it raises that rate, it puts the brakes on the amount of money that people are going to borrow. Okay, and the amount of money people are going to be able to pump into the economy to get it burning, almost like pumping coals into a hot fire. It makes that fire burn more and more. So the Fed would try to increase rates so that less money is available to or people have less incentive to borrow money. So this is let's look back to 2008 during the mortgage crisis, when there was a huge financial crisis, mainly due to an overextension of credit to the American public in mortgages, and that made the economy crash in 2008. And so rates were the federal funds borrowing rate was up around 3 or 4%, and at that time, interest rates to borrow money to buy a house were up in the 6-7% range, and so but still, money was still pretty easy to come by because credit lending standards were pretty flexible and easy and loose, and so a lot of people were borrowing money, and so the economy crashed, and the Fed lowered the rates down to literally 0%. Okay, because they were afraid that if people weren't borrowing money because it was too expensive to borrow it, then the economy wasn't going to be able to recover from that recession and from that crisis. Okay, so they lowered the rates down to 0. Okay, so let's go 8 years later or 10 years later from there to 2018, when finally the economy has recovered and we are in a position that we are able to start to raise rates again. The Fed starts to increase rates again, and because the economy is doing so well, and we're starting to gain jobs and jobs and jobs, and businesses are doing well and well and well, and so the Fed starts looking at this and saying, "Hey, look, if we don't increase rates, then the economy might spin out of control. It might burn too hot. We might get off kilter." So they decided to raise their rates. Banks, in result, started to raise their rates along with it. And so it was getting more expensive and more expensive to borrow money. They were trying to put the brakes on borrowing. They were trying to put the brakes on the availability of money, or at least the price of with the price of money. And so the rates started going up and up and up. And all of a sudden, let's look at 2020 and late 2019. The coronavirus comes into play. Okay, and so the economy, whereas it was going up and up and up, starts to go back down, 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 down. So what does the Fed do? It lowers rates again to allow the easy borrowing of money, the cheaper borrowing of money, so that people are not afraid to continue to borrow money, to pump money through the economy. And so lower rates give people a little more assurance that they can borrow money. So they tend to borrow more. Businesses tend to borrow more. Consumers tend to borrow more. They're not as afraid to purchase things such as automobiles or homes if rates are lower. So this is just a story that I was trying to wrap a lot of this in. A couple of key points here. We've had a couple of key crises. We had a recent, 2008 mortgage crisis. It was a terrible event for our country. It literally sent us into a recession. Okay, and then we had an economic recovery over about 10 years. Okay. A stabilization for about 6 or 8 years, and then really in 2018 the economy started really 16, 17, 18 it really started jumping back up again. Okay, and then the Fed started to put the brakes, raise interest rates again, and then coronavirus hit and it sent our economy back down into a slump, and now we've kind of recovered back out of that. Apparently we can't see the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, this is just a story that wrapped in also policy setting ability by the federal government. The federal government is able to set fiscal policies. They're able to set tax policies, as we'll learn about a little bit next week too. But interest rates are a key tool that the federal government can manage through the Federal Reserve Bank to help control and regulate the economy, which is one of the federal government's jobs. Okay, anyway, I've talked too much already. Let me know if you have any questions this week, and we'll talk to you later. 936-205-8236 if you need to get a hold of me by text or phone or email. All right, thanks. Bye.